I see some familiar faces in the crowd, and as well as many new ones. So I'll start by introducing myself. David already mentioned I'm an assistant professor here at the Werklund School of Education. I study knowledge mobilization and networks like Research Impact Canada. And as David mentioned yesterday, I've been fortunate to be involved with Research Impact Canada for a number of years now, since about late 2017. And today I'm going to be talking to you about some work initiated by the Professional Development Committee of Research Impact Canada. At some point last year, Michael, Johnny, and I met to chat about institutional knowledge mobilization planning. What do we know from the literature and what's happening across the Research Impact Canada network? We decided that we needed to learn more about our present moment, which leads us to this session. I'm going to share some background findings and insights from an environmental scan that examines strategic planning for knowledge mobilization throughout RIC's member universities, focusing specifically on the university context. Now, I'm going to try a presentation style that's quite a bit different from what I'm used to. You see, I recently became a father, and my son is still quite young. He's only 5 months, but I've been thinking a lot about storytelling. So my plan here is to layer some storytelling elements onto a traditional academic presentation, which is, the style we're all familiar with. If it fails, let's just chalk it up to lack of sleep and poor judgment that follows from that. So let's jump in. Okay. So welcome everyone to chapter 1 of our journey. We're here to set the scene for our exploration of knowledge mobilization planning in higher education. As we navigate through today's session, think of it as an unfolding story. A story where each of us has a role to play in shaping how universities engage with communities, make research more impactful, and evolve to meet emerging challenges. Every adventure must start with understanding the landscape, the key players in the quest at hand. This is where we lay the groundwork. We begin with the current status of knowledge mobilization as a field that continues to garner attention and dispute in higher education settings globally. We begin with our first act of an unfolding narrative, a tale of missed opportunities. We all know that every great story has its challenges, its antagonists, and its moments where the hero questions the journey. It's this story, the status quo, or in the story, the status quo plays that role. And it's a complex assortment of impediments that everyone in here likely knows well. Researchers often face institutional constraints and inadequate incentives that limit the mobilization of their work beyond academic circles. Conversely, practitioners encounter barriers to accessing, evaluating, and applying scholarly research, often defaulting to trusted but perhaps outdated sources and approaches. And this creates sort of a paradoxical landscape. Both groups remain isolated despite having mutually beneficial goals. And I think it's imperative to recognize the gaps, these gaps as systemic shortcomings. This is the juncture where we must start to close the loop of mobilizing research to achieve impact. Next in our narrative, we encounter another shade of the status quo, and that's institutional strategic planning, which is a complex landscape within the broader realm of knowledge mobilization. First, we must grapple with the fact that the term knowledge mobilization is often conceptually vague in academia, a character that many now mention but fully comprehend. Additionally, knowledge mobilization is inconsistently integrated across universities' threefold missions, teaching, research, and what's called often their third mission activities. These elements often operate in isolation like distant islands. Adding complexity, each institution, whether a research-intensive university or more of a community-focused institution, is a unique entity with distinct goals and cultures. Within these kingdoms, we find academic disciplines, each with its own norms and values. What we glean then is that institutional strategic planning for knowledge mobilization is a multifaceted tapestry, and it's going to require collaborative effort for a transformative rewrite. Can I just click? Maybe that's. Now I've got things up. There we go. Perfect. Now, for this story, I want us to think about knowledge mobilization as both a guide and a catalyst in this journey through higher education and social impact. It serves as an active approach, ensuring that academic knowledge is not merely stockpiled, but mobilized to meet real-world needs. And knowledge mobilization is not monolithic, as everyone in here would likely well know. It embodies at least 8 distinct archetypes of practices, each serving as a unique tool for a specific challenge. And these archetypes are akin to plot devices that can resolve a range of issues, offering a diversified approach for effective action. And here's the linchpin. If impact is the what we aim to achieve, let's say the goal or the treasure at the end of our quest, then knowledge mobilization is the how. It's the roadmap or the strategy or the plan of action. It's the narrative force that drives us from the story's opening lines to its satisfying, if often open-ended, conclusion. All right, on to chapter 2. This is where our story evolves from exposition to action. Imagine you just stepped onto a ship bound for an uncharted territory. You have a map and a compass, thanks to our hero knowledge mobilization, and a motivated crew, which is all of us in this room. You see the storms on the horizon, but you're also armed with tales of past triumphs. This is the do part of our story. What makes the hero's journey exciting are not just the battles won, but the lessons learned, the friendships formed, and the character developed. This character is all about that, facing the complexity, seeking solutions, and forging alliances. In our global landscape, knowledge mobilization is not just a local hero, it's an international force. Notable systems like the UK's Research Excellence Framework and Hong Kong's Research Assessment Exercise serve as arenas where the efforts that higher education institutions make to achieve impact face competitive post hoc review to establish funding and new forms of prestige. And simultaneously, collaboration is key. Networks like Research Impact Canada act as guiding councils, sharing wisdom and strengthening impact planning efforts. Why is this international scope so important to recognize? Because knowledge mobilization is a collective endeavor. We can gain insights and collaborate with others from around the globe. The interconnectedness amplifies our achievements and makes the challenges more surmountable. The global map serves as a testament to our narrative as a part of a larger story resonating beyond local confines. So at this pivotal moment, our hero, again, knowledge mobilization, stands at a crossroads with two major forks, mission-driven and assessment-driven systems, and enabling and achieving impact strategies. This mission-driven path is for planners and visionaries who set the stage, imagining how research will drive change. Conversely, the assessment-driven route involves retrospective thinkers who evaluate and catalog research impact. The second fork presents another dichotomy, enabling and achieving impact strategies. Enabling strategies act as a mentor, cultivating a culture of impact and fostering collective growth through partnerships. The achieving approach, on the other hand, is akin to a focused tactician aiming for specific goals through detailed plans and strategic collaborations. Each path has its merits and challenges, offering different strategies for navigating the complex world of knowledge mobilization. So the question then is, there's lots of activity, where do we set our sights? In our narrative, we first encounter, I see. So this was a change I made. We're gonna just move on to the next one. In our narrative, we encounter formidable challenges, our heroes, and our real world tests. First, ironically, we must overcome a detachment between knowledge mobilization, research, and practice, where practices may be carried out without reference to existing theoretical and empirical knowledge, and where research is often disconnected from what is meaningful to practitioners. This disconnection jeopardizes not just individual efforts, but the broader field as a whole. Next, we must face the complexity that is the many facets of research organizations, from bureaucracy and skills gaps to budget constraints and political landscapes, each head of this sort of metaphorical hydra presenting its own hurdles that must be overcome. Conquering these challenges requires more than force. It demands awareness, strategic collaboration, and a willingness to learn from both successes and failures. And each vanquished challenge enriches our narrative. All right. Now, as we confront those myriad challenges, let's also celebrate the victories that light our way. One such luminary is Research Impact Canada, which embodies a co-created and positive impact culture grounded in collaboration and shared commitment. We know from past stories of Rick, which in this case is to say some of the past evaluation efforts that we've done, this highly diverse network finds common ground in that knowledge mobilization work is both technical and relational. Whether members are more on what might be considered the brokering and engagement shades of knowledge mobilization or those of research administration, there's collective learning through those technical and relational dimensions of knowledge mobilization. And it's from this backdrop that we ask, what can we learn from member universities in terms of strategic planning for knowledge mobilization? Okay, on to the most exciting part of this story. This is the chapter that all of us here are actively writing. Each day there's new paradigms to understand, new theories to consider, new communities and research partners to engage with. So this chapter is about co-creation, not just of knowledge, but also the pathways that bring knowledge to the world. And if I can be allowed one research methods footnote to this story, this is the part, as we're telling it, that follows from an environmental scan of Research Impact Canada's member universities. So we use a structured approach to a structured search protocol. We comb through the institutional web pages and strategic planning documents of member universities, ultimately landing on 4 documents that focus specifically on either knowledge mobilization or research impact at the strategic planning level. And then based on that work, which is ongoing, we resolve 4 general themes. Let's begin with the theme of alignment of strategic plans for knowledge mobilization with institutional goals. Here we take the University of British Columbia as a character who displays this kind of alignment. UBC's knowledge mobilization strategy is grounded in 2 strategic reports that highlight the need for enhanced institutional knowledge mobilization capacity. It also outlines upfront how the strategy is aligned with the university's overarching strategic plan and other essential plans that inform the challenges and opportunities for knowledge mobilization with their diverse communities. So here are the connections with UBC's, I think, Indigenous strategic plan encourages thinking about how knowledge mobilization efforts can be reciprocal, they can be community-led, and they can legitimize other ways of knowing. What makes these alignments so important is a question we should probably all be asking. And while this is ultimately, I think, an empirical question, one Rick is moving through or toward and through some of the current evaluation work that we're doing. There is some early evidence that such alignments may mitigate some of the persistent barriers that we see to knowledge mobilization. Some of these things like structural accretion, where new functions are added to institutions without foregoing older and older ones that may serve as impediments. Things like over-reliance on linear knowledge mobilization and some of the uncertainty and precarity surrounding knowledge mobilization roles, while also supporting the development of more impact healthy institutions, to borrow some of the language from Dr. Phipps and Dr. Bailey, which is measured along these sorts of elements like commitment, connectivity, co-production, competencies, and clarity. All right, let's next zoom in on the theme of engaging diverse communities, which is exemplified by the University of Ottawa. Their strategy, and that is their strategy from 2019 to 2021, was treated as a collaborative endeavor involving administrators, faculty, and staff, sort of like a roundtable of experts. And a key feature of their plan is that a clear definition of knowledge users served as a reminder that knowledge mobilization approaches need to be tailored to specific audiences. The strategy stands out for its multi-phased implementation informed by the needs and perspectives of their researchers. And we can see from their goals displayed here, their strategy is an example of enabling impact, where they aim to build impact capacity across and culture across their institution, and with a strong focus on partnership and engagement. Delving into our next chapter, let's explore the University of Brighton's interweaving of internal and external connections. And their strategic plan, Brighton is not an isolated castle. It actively formed alliances and partnerships through its research and knowledge exchange groups. These groups spearhead knowledge mobilization in the university's 4 global challenge areas, again, showing alignment with other institutional strategies. And what's more, in the University of Brighton's approach, various characters ensure both adherence to and improvement of the strategic plan. So this multi-level oversight that they've outlined in their plan ensures that not only is the strategic plan actually being followed and going beyond sort of the strategic plan on the shelf, it's actually being iteratively improved. It's like having a fellowship where each member is checking the map, debating the route, and ensuring everyone's still moving towards the same goals. For our final thematic cornerstone, Let's explore clarifying target audience, which I think was really nicely exemplified by the University of Alberta. So knowing your audience is akin to having a detailed map of the lands that you're about to explore. And the University of Alberta clearly identifies their key stakeholders, and they unite them under this idea, umbrella idea of providing diversity in what constitutes research impact. They also issue calls to action as semi-personalized challenges for all characters at all levels of their university, encouraging each to play a part in this broader story of knowledge mobilization. And what they seem to highlight is that broad appeals may resonate with no one. Rather, with greater specificity of roles, we have the potential that strategic planning considerations are not only heard, but heeded. Google changed how this looks. Turning to the Research Impact Canada Chronicles. We examine the knowledge mobilization journeys of these 4 universities. So we have again the University of Alberta, we have the University of Brighton, UBC, and the University of Ottawa. Through the lens of both Bailey and Phipps institutional impact health and Reed and colleagues impact strategy typology. And we see that each institution, if you take a glance at this, excels really in both clarity and commitment. So they're sharing sort of a deep understanding of knowledge mobilization or their respective term. However, their strategies differ in terms of connectivity, co-production, and competencies. And so we're seeing even among these institutions that are in many tangible ways leading the charge of strategic planning for knowledge mobilization, there's still ground to cover. And similarly, we see a finding that was made by Reed and Mark Reed and colleagues, in that institutions appear to be structuring their type of impact strategy based on what best meets the needs of their context and their institutions. So we're not seeing a sort of clear divide between enabling and achieving. Some are really sort of exploring that continuum within those 2 labels. Okay. It's time to lift our eyes to the horizon. This is the final chapter of the adventure, and here we look forward to the challenges and triumphs that await us on the next leg of the journey. So, though the area of strategic planning for knowledge mobilization is growing, and I think both this work and the work of Dr. Mark Reed from the UK is illustrating that. There's a lot of excitement and energy in this area. Let's be forthright. We still have significant challenges that we need to face and some key advancements to make. First, we must continue to field test and refine some of the most promising tools in this area. Tools like the Institutional Health Check Workbook and the Enabling Achieving Impact Typology. There's work being done actively by both Research Impact Canada and some other groups, and we just need to continue to share and find out the usability and the value of these tools. Secondly, to echo the call from other knowledge mobilization researchers, we need to put attention to how universities are building impact culture and impact literacy. So I'm going to quote Drs. Bailey and Phipps in their work on the impact literacy framework, in that we often see this sort of artificial separation between institutional and individual literacies when it comes to knowledge mobilization and impact, which overlooks their interdependency and symbiosis. So while an individual practitioner can build their own practices and competencies in these areas, the extent to which they can implement them depends on the institutional context and the appetite to do so. And any benefit might actually be capped or nullified if an institution remains unchanged. And lastly, let's not forget the unsung heroes, the skilled knowledge mobilization professionals. These are the cartographers and the navigators of our tale, and their professional networks empower our journey forward. They require direct support, and particularly in terms of overcoming the well-known precarity that many individuals in these positions face. And continuing on here, what should the blueprints for institutional K&B plans look like? First and foremost, let's be clear in defining our goals and aligning those with other institutional strategy. We need to clarify terms like impact and knowledge mobilization. Why do they matter in our unique landscapes? And how do those goals dance in concert with the strategic plans that are already in place? Next, we must navigate these complexities of relationships. Relationship building isn't just diplomacy. It's the alchemy that transforms research into impact. We need to prioritize alliances and partnerships, not just in practice, but also in the policy and the planning documents that inform our journey. Last but not least, our knowledge mobilization plans must have meaningful follow-through. We need practitioners and evaluators. We need to be practitioners and evaluators. And this is the art of closing that research practice loop, which I don't know if that was the intent here, but I saw that yesterday and I thought this must be the research practice loop that's right. We're representing. All right. As every great tale comes to an end, so does our journey. In stories, epilogues offer a glimpse into the happily ever after. So that's the impact of the quest on the heroes and the world they inhabit, and our story is no different. So let's ask ourselves, what comes next in the narrative of knowledge mobilization? I think a key takeaway here is that strategic planning for knowledge mobilization is not a one-size-fits-all. So we can't look at any one of these documents and transplant it from one context directly into another. We need to be thinking about some of these questions and provocations that have been raised here, as raised by people like Dr. Mark Reed and everyone in this room who is thinking about strategic planning for knowledge mobilization. And so what can you do? If there were some takeaways to leave everyone with, I think first and foremost is to become acquainted with the strategic planning documents of your home institution and to start to identify those alignments with knowledge mobilization and impact, to explore those various connections and approaches already happening on and off campus, and to recognize that this is a collective endeavor and that we must continue to share stories, insights, failures, and successes. And if anybody is interested, we have one paper out that is based on some of our past evaluation work that served as sort of the progenitor for some of this discussion today. So you can check that out. And I'd also like to thank or sort of put to see that this is going to be actually featured at some point soon in a paper that I'm collaborating with three excellent students that are all here, Emily, Aloysius, and Christy Murray. So that's my talk, and thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions or just have conversation. I'd love to.
It was a rhetorical question. Do you have a copy of that U of A plan?
I do,
Because
yeah.
ours has disappeared.
Oh.
So I'm texting with Julie Bailey and like sent her a picture of you talking. So that's great. Steve's been amazing. I just want you to, this paper that he's got up there, notice that it's got Jen and Virginie and Kathy as co-authors. It was really wonderful to work with Research Impact Canada practitioners on this paper. So thank you, collectively. I have to talk to Steve and Michael at lunch because they know where. So Steve and Michael and Julie Bailey at the University of Lincoln and I are joining up some efforts. So this is this effort that Stephen and Michael have been doing around the existing Research Impact Canada plans, but independently, but kind of connected. Julie and I are working on a tool for impact strategy planning. And so we're going to join these two efforts because of the deep research that Steve has done with the practical tools that Julie and I tend to do. And I see that we'll be able, as Research Impact Canada, to put a suite of tools together that will include things like the institutional health check, the University of Ottawa's needs assessment plan, Mark Reed's paper, which does the enabling and the, what's the other? Achieving and enabling types of plans, and this work and the tools that Julie and I are doing, so that we'll have a compendium, a toolkit for institutional impact planning. I'm going to be piloting the tools with the University of Melbourne in November, so we'll get some real life experience and we'll be able to refine them based on what we've done. And then I would invite Julie and Steve and Michael to do a webinar for the network on when these tools are ready and how you might be able to use them in your context, including, as Heather and Rachel just said, engaging the VPRs. Yeah. So thank you, Steve.
Yeah.